It's never a good feeling to think back at your early 20s and regret how you lived your life. I'm turning 25 this year and I'm definitely still on this journey of figuring everything out. But after a lot of trial and error, I learned the hard way about how precious this decade really is after half of it was already gone. So in hopes that you're able to make the most of your 20s, here are 5 things I learned in the process. Early 20s Siedmann probably wouldn't have admitted this, but I was kind of just swinging life at that point. I was just doing what I wanted, not thinking about any sort of repercussions about the future. So the first thing I needed to do was really figure out what were the most important things to me in life. As simple as this might sound, a lot of people, including me, don't take the time to really sit down, reflect, and prioritize the most important things in their life. As chaotic as life can be, especially in your 20s when you're sort of figuring everything out, this is so important to maintain and refocus your sense of direction in life. So the work that I do is very important to me. And in the past, I would often neglect other facets of life, such as taking care of myself and taking care of the relationships that I had around me in order to fuel the work that I was doing. And in the long term, this made me extremely unhappy because I didn't sit down and think about the fact that taking care of myself was a whole lot more important than taking the extra time to get a little bit more work done. So I'm somebody that's very task-oriented and very goal-oriented. So whenever I know that there's something I want to do, I put my head down and I get it done. But in turn, I feel like this made me a lot more impatient when it comes to waiting for the results to happen. So the second thing that I learned was that there's absolutely no need to rush, but that also doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing anything to sort of progress forward. I think this impatience came from a desire to prove myself and constantly comparing myself to my peers who I felt like were ahead of me, not realizing that my goals were completely different than theirs. I wasn't taking into account the nuances that made my journey a whole lot more different than theirs. I have a great amount of respect for the things that I create, and when it comes to that, I feel like I have this desire to be perfect all the time. So this third lesson is don't be afraid to make mistakes and fail as much as you can, because that's how we learn and that's how we grow. If you're in a spot where you're comfortable and you're doing everything right, then that probably means that your goals aren't big enough and that you're completely within your comfort zone. I was constantly getting in the way of my own progress because I was afraid that something wasn't going to turn out good just for the sake of my pride. It's always important to do the best you can, but constantly impeding your own progress for the sake of making the process perfect or making the product perfect is not the way to go. So right now we're about halfway done with this list, and I hope you guys are finding this information helpful, and you definitely want to stick around for lesson number 5 because that's something that I feel like is one of the most important ones in this whole thing. In college, I had to go through the nursing program. And for any of you guys who are watching this who might be nurses or know anybody that had to go through nursing school, you know that it can be a pretty cutthroat process. There's a lot of studying involved, there's a lot of clinicals involved. And because of this, I feel like college made me so much more serious. I need to be fully responsible for my life and my success to graduate nursing school. So when I finally graduated nursing school and I was kind of just out into the open world, I feel like I still had a lot of these practices of taking my work seriously, but definitely taking myself way too seriously. So this fourth lesson that I kind of had to learn was that yes, your 20s are pivotal when it comes to laying the foundation for the rest of your life, but it is also the only time where you'll start having money. You won't have as many obligations with kids, families. You'll probably also have the most time for yourself. So while your 20s is the time to grow, your 20s is also the time to enjoy your youth. Being an adult can be pretty difficult, having to learn how to manage so much, your finances, your relationships, your work, your career, the things you do outside of work. And so over time, I kind of had to learn how to enjoy myself. And then now I'm in the practice of finding the time to enjoy life. So in my early 20s, I was kind of bagging on myself for not having everything situated in terms of how I wanted my life to be. And this only made me so much more anxious and so much more afraid of the future. And I think I did this because I was wanting to control every single variable in my life. But at the end of the day, I had to realize that it's impossible to control everything that goes on. So lesson number 5 is it's perfectly okay not to have everything figured out, and it's okay not to know things. It's okay not to understand everything. And unfortunately, the only way to remedy this is trial by fire. You have to take action. If you don't know what you want to do in terms of your career, you're going to have to just start trying things out. So the 20s is ripe for experimenting and seeing what works for you and what makes you feel fulfilled. So these are the 5 most important things that I learned and I have to constantly remind myself in order to refocus my life. If you guys watched this far, thank you very much. I'll see you guys in the next video.